The wind whispered through the narrow alley. Shadows stretched long across the cracked pavement. My footsteps echoed softly, each one sounding louder than the last. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting uneven pools of light. I felt the chill crawl along my spine. A sudden sound made me freeze. It was subtle at first, almost like a sigh. Then I heard it again, closer this time, brushing against my ear. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing heart. I told myself it was just the wind. Yet, something inside me refused to believe that. My eyes darted to the dark corners of the alley. I could feel a presence, cold and heavy, pressing behind me. The air thickened. Every breath felt like inhaling a shadow. I turned slowly, but the street behind me was empty. My pulse drummed in my ears, deafening and insistent. I took another step forward. The sound followed, matching my pace. It was the softest of footsteps, hesitant yet deliberate. I tried to convince myself it was imagination, nothing more. A sudden gust of wind carried a strange scent. Something familiar and yet wrong. It made my stomach twist, a mix of fear and recognition. I paused, every muscle tensing, every nerve alert. I felt it then, a presence closer than air should allow. A shadow that should not have existed. The hair on my arms stood on end. I slowly turned my head to glance over my shoulder. Time seemed to stretch. The alley felt narrower, the darkness thicker. And there it was, standing behind me. I froze completely, unable to move. The figure did not speak, did not breathe audibly, yet its presence pressed into my mind like ice. I could feel the heat of my own fear mingling with the chill in the alley. My eyes strained to make out any shape, any feature, any clue. The streetlight above flickered again, and for a moment, I saw it clearly. It was a man, tall and thin, with shoulders stiff and unnaturally still. His face was hidden in shadow, yet I felt like he could see right into me. I wanted to run, yet my legs betrayed me, rooted to the pavement. A soft shuffle came from behind me, deliberate and slow. The sound of shoes against concrete, soft but unmistakable. My chest tightened as I realized I had no escape in the narrow alley. Every instinct screamed at me to turn, but something warned me against it. I took a shallow breath and turned my head slowly, the movement deliberate, careful. The man was closer than before, though I could not have measured the distance. I noticed then the faint smell of something I recognized from long ago. It was the scent of smoke and rain, of something comforting and terrifying at once. The alley felt impossibly long now. Shadows seemed to stretch and twist toward us, as if alive. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, drowning out all other sound. And then I heard it, a whisper so faint it could have been wind, yet it carried meaning. My name, clear, deliberate, full of recognition. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized this voice belonged to someone I knew. I had known him long ago, before everything changed. Before the betrayal, before the silence, before the emptiness. I turned fully this time, bracing myself for what I might see. The face emerged slowly from the darkness. It was him, or perhaps it was not him, yet it was unmistakably familiar. The eyes met mine, and my stomach dropped. They were the same eyes, yet different. Cold, empty, and piercing, yet full of a past I remembered vividly. Memories I had buried, people I had lost, promises I had forgotten. All of it came rushing back with a force that nearly made me fall. The figure stepped forward, and the ground beneath seemed to tremble. My breath caught, and I struggled to make sense of what I was seeing. The person before me was alive and impossible at once. Alive, in body, yet carrying a shadow of something I could not name. I wanted to speak, to call their name, to demand an explanation. My voice failed me. The alley swallowed any sound I tried to make. Only the pulse of fear and recognition remained, loud and insistent. They raised a hand slowly, deliberately. It was not a threatening gesture, yet it felt heavier than 100 punches. Memories of laughter, of arguments, of moments shared, filled my mind. I could see them in the tilt of the head, in the curve of the lips, in the silence between words. The air between us vibrated with tension. It was the kind of tension that twists the gut, quickens the heartbeat, and steals thought. I realized then that I had not just seen someone familiar. I had seen the person who had shaped the person I had become. And perhaps the one who had broken me. A shiver ran through me as they spoke, their voice steady and calm. It carried weight I had not felt in years, the weight of truth and judgment. I could not move, could not respond, could not even blink. Everything I had known seemed to pause, waiting for the next moment. Then, the figure smiled. Not warmly, not kindly, but in a way that felt like a knife carving through ice. It was a smile I remembered, yet it held a depth I had never seen before. I felt my knees weaken, and I knew that whatever happened next would change everything. The alley seemed smaller now, the darkness pressing in from all sides. The wind stopped entirely, leaving only the sound of our shared breaths. I realized with a jolt that this encounter was not by chance. It had been waiting for me, as I had unknowingly waited for it. They took another step closer, and the light caught their face fully. I could see the scars, the lines, the subtle changes that time had carved. Yet beneath it all, they were still unmistakably the person I had known. And yet, they were no longer the person I could recognize or trust. My mind raced, desperate to find a reason, an explanation, a way out. But every thought was swallowed by the suffocating intensity of the moment. I realized then that I was completely exposed, seen in a way I had never allowed anyone to see. And the truth of who stood behind me was far more terrifying than I could have imagined. The figure stopped just a step away. Our eyes locked, and the world seemed to shrink around us. Every shadow, every sound, every heartbeat sharpened into a single moment. I could see it clearly now, the weight behind those eyes. It was not anger, not hatred, not vengeance. It was sorrow, heavy and silent, pressing into the space between us. They spoke again, their voice soft but firm. Words I had longed for, and feared to hear, rolled over me like cold water. You cannot run from what is behind you, they said. And yet, you do not have to face it alone. The tension in my chest began to ease. The air seemed lighter, though the shadows remained. I realized that the fear had not been of them, but of myself. Of the memories I had buried, the truths I had refused to face, and the choices I had made. Slowly, I took a step back, then another, feeling my legs regain strength. They mirrored me, not advancing, not retreating, simply standing there. The silence stretched, but it was no longer oppressive. It was a space to breathe, to recognize what had been lost, and what could still be understood. Then, almost imperceptibly, they smiled. It was no longer a knife through ice. It was quiet, gentle, a recognition that what was broken could be seen, and perhaps healed. I swallowed hard and finally found my voice. "Why now?" I whispered. They shook their head slightly, and the corners of their mouth twitched. "Because you were ready," they replied. I exhaled, the tension leaving my shoulders in a long, shivering wave. The alley no longer felt like a trap. It was simply a corridor between what had been and what could be. Slowly, I turned and continued walking. I did not look back immediately, but I could feel the gaze on me. Not threatening, not demanding, simply present. A presence that had haunted me and yet, somehow, freed me. The wind returned, whispering softly through the alley. Shadows shifted, the flickering street lights steadied. I felt my pulse calm, my breath even out. The fear lingered, yes, but it was now tempered with understanding. When I finally looked back, they were gone. No trace, no shadow, no movement. Yet their presence lingered in the quiet spaces, in the way I felt the alley, in the way I carried myself. I realized then that seeing them had not been about confrontation. It had been about acknowledgement. About facing the past, the choices, the fears, and accepting them. And in that acceptance, I felt something I had not felt in years. Relief, clarity, and a strange, trembling hope. The night stretched on, indifferent and quiet. I walked out of the alley into the soft glow of the city lights. The world continued, but I had changed. I had seen who was behind me, and in doing so, I had finally seen myself.